Random House Audiobooks presents The Tom Peters Seminar by Tom Peters. Read for you by the author.
The Tom Peters Seminar. Crazy times call for crazy organizations. Beyond change toward the abandonment of everything. Crazy times call for crazy organizations. There's little doubt that the times are crazy, whether you're a banker, software producer, restaurateur, public official. And if the times are crazy, well, then what would make more sense than crazy organizations? But if you grant me that premise, then you have to conclude that our principal organizational problem today is the lack of craziness. What has bothered me no end since writing Liberation Management is the realization of how stale, dull, and boring most organizations are. Being well organized in the conventional sense has become a hindrance, not a help. The 90s will be a decade in a hurry, a nanosecond culture, said David Weiss, vice chairman of Northern Telecom. There will be only two kinds of managers, the quick and the dead. That line invariably gets a laugh in my seminars, but I think what I'm actually hearing is a titter of terror. For white-collar workers in blue, for CEOs and receptionists, the bodies are piling up on the street. And despite a nearly 3-year-old recovery, there is no sign that the blood has stopped flowing. On the contrary. Recently, wrote Toyo Giotin, one-time Vice Minister of Finance in Japan, in Changing Fortunes, the book he co-authored with former Federal Reserve Chief Paul Volcker, I was talking to one of Japan's best foreign exchange dealers, and I asked him to name the factors he considered in buying and selling. He said many factors, sometimes very short-term, some medium, and some long-term. I became very interested when he said he considered the long-term and asked him what he meant by that time frame. He paused a few seconds and replied with genuine seriousness, probably 10 minutes, "That's the way the market is moving these days." Most of us aren't in foreign exchange, but I'm not sure it makes much difference what business you're in today. The market's metabolism has unalterably speeded up. Foreign exchange, telecommunications, consumer electronics, and everything else is moving at an accelerated pace. It doesn't matter what kind of business you examine. Consider IBM's Austin, Texas personal computer operation. In the last 3 years, The Economist reported in December 1993, it's cut its average manufacturing cycle time from 7.5 to 1.5 days and new product development time from 24 months to 8 months. Increased its product portfolio from 19 to 85, and simultaneously shrunk the payroll from 1,100 to 423 people. But an enterprise doesn't have to be high-tech to get caught up in today's acceleration. Few industries are older or more traditional than mineral extraction. Yet Australia's Kalgoorlie Consolidated Gold Mines more than doubled production between 1989 and 1992, at the same time cutting back the number of workers from 1,500 to 720. Ho-hum, eh? Revolution. The word is not too strong, and it is not the same thing as change. Change? Change. Yes, we've almost all finally embraced the notion that change is the only constant today. Well, sorry, forget change. The word is feeble. Keep saying revolution. If it doesn't roll easily off of your tongue, then I suggest you have a perception problem. And, more to the point, a business or a career problem. What we do, what we make, how we work, each is the subject of nothing less than revolution. Remember the day when all the people needed to do a job worked with you in the same building? When you took it for granted that the best folks for any task were already on your payroll, when you could go months without attending a meeting where outsiders were present? How dated and silly it all seems now. Dispersed ad hoc networks are becoming the new, if ephemeral, backbone of enterprise based on knowledge. Knowledge gathered from whomever, wherever, and packaged to meet customers' fickle demands. Tomorrow's economy will revolve around innovatively assembled brain power, not muscle power. We're trying to sell more and more intellect and less materials. These words, spoken by 3M strategic planner George Haig, will animate much of the discussion to follow. 3M is by birth and tradition a lumpy object company, a materials company, yet it's trying to go light on lumps, heavy on intellect. A marketing executive from the company's Austin-based electronics sector told me, "Tom, Our salespeople don't carry sample kits anymore. Now the battle is our flow chart versus their flow chart. That is, does our process enable us to custom engineer a solution, that is a product, for a customer's specific needs more rapidly than our competitors can? Flowcharts and intellect. That's the story, even if a lumpy object does eventually change hands. It's a soft world. Nike, a shoe company, is listed in Fortune's 500 service issue, not the industrial 500 one. Nike produces its spiffy footwear in factories around the globe, but it creates its enormous value via superb design and, above all, marketing skills. Microsoft's only factory asset is the human imagination, observed the New York Times Magazine writer Fred Moody. In seminars, I've used the slide on which these words appear at least 100 times, and yet every time that simple sentence comes into view on the screen, I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck bristle. Only factory asset, human imagination. That is a mouthful and a mindful. At any rate, it seems so in an era where most companies, especially the giants, are still managed in accordance with the principles of the Industrial Revolution. After exposing an audience to the Microsoft quote, I ask a telling question. Does anyone here know what it means to manage the human imagination? So far, not a single hand has gone up, including mine. I don't know what it means to manage the human imagination either, but I do know that imagination is the main source of value in the new economy. And I know that we had better figure out the answer to my question quick. More and more intellect and less materials. Only factory asset is the human imagination. Welcome to the world of soft, the world of gray matter, and watch out if you still think brawn defines a worker. Every organization has to prepare for the abandonment of everything it does, Peter Drucker wrote in the Harvard Business Review. Drucker isn't given to overstatement, yet note the key words in this sentence. Mr. Drucker did not say most companies ought to be prepared to change significantly in the face of changing times. No, he did not say change. He used the words every, abandon, everything, which are dramatically different. I've said to seminar participants, forget your detailed note-taking today. Instead, take a single piece of paper and simply write on it, every, abandon, everything. That's it. Then when you get back to work, slip the page beneath the glass on your desktop. Refer to it hourly. When I tell them that, I'm in earnest. Coming to grips with no baloney words, abandon, not change, is a big part of the task we face. The world is turning upside down. This upheaval is of the once every 2 centuries variety, and it's almost impossible for people who have been alive for 25, 35, or even 50 or 60 years to imagine. During recent trips to Asia, Oceania, Europe, Latin America, I couldn't help but note that every developed and developing economy is pursuing precisely the same strategy. That is, create a value-added, knowledge-based, export-led economy. I heard these are equivalent words in Argentina, Brazil, Ireland, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, as well as in the United States, Japan, and Germany, and in Thailand, and Indonesia, and China. That is, everywhere. A lot of us act as if anyone who doesn't live and work in North America, Western Europe, or Japan is still making sandals. Not so. Korea's Samsung, hardly a player a decade ago, has quickly become the #1 producer of commodity semiconductor memory chips, or DRAMs, and in Penang, Malaysia, leading U.S. and Japanese electronic companies no longer limit workers to assembly chores. Employees design what they build. Bangalore, India has become a software design hotbed. A few wags even see it as the world's software capital in 30 years. Singapore, the self-styled intelligent island, is a global hub for banking, telecommunications, and logistics. We're flattening our organization, shedding our bureaucratic excesses. That's good and long overdue. But as to entering the age of imagination, we're just barely sniffing at the doorway. In October 1992, I talked with Walmart Chief Executive Officer David Glass. There's an absolute dearth of new and exciting fashion-forward products, he complained. A dearth? In 1981, 2,689 new products made their way to the grocery and drugstore shelves in the United States. In 1991, just 10 years later, that number had soared to 16,143. A new product was introduced every half hour that year. So what was Glass complaining about? Let's look back at what he actually said. An absolute...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?